Anakin Skywalker's story of corruption by the dark side and redemption at the hands of his long-lost son is a profound tragedy that ultimately sees the former war general and Jedi hero find the light and return to his former self in his dying moments. After decades of being trapped under the chains of the Emperor, Anakin is finally able to break away from the grip of Darth Vader and save his son in one last act of heroism, ending Palpatine and bringing a close to the age of the Empire. During the celebration on Endor, we see that he was able to join Obi-Wan and Yoda as a Force ghost after his demise, holding onto the mortal plane for a while longer and preserving his consciousness in such a way that allowed him to continue living within the Force itself. What's interesting to note here, however, is that Obi-Wan and Yoda both had something distinct in common when they died. That being the fact that their physical bodies vanished upon their deaths. Both Obi-Wan and Yoda's physical forms become one with the Force, not leaving anything behind as they passed into the Force itself, which is something only seen by them and Luke Skywalker when he ultimately dies as well. All of these individuals disappeared when they became one with the Force. So why didn't Anakin's body disappear upon his death? How was he still able to become a Force ghost regardless? And what are the bizarre implications for one particular Jedi Knight that we've already seen meet his end? Well, today, students of the Force and weary acolytes of the galaxy will attempt to answer that question, and attempt to answer why out of the individuals that became Force ghosts, was Anakin Skywalker the only one who had his body remain in the physical world. First though, according to our analytics, a lot of you guys that watch the channel haven't actually subscribed yet, so if you're interested and are enjoying the daily Star Wars content, force crush that subscribe button. For the answer, there are two main explanations. They each have their ramifications in the lore, and each of them have evidence to suggest that this might be a viable explanation. But let's dive into each of them, and then we will let you as an individual viewer determine which answer you like more. The first explanation comes from the Legends novel titled The Story of Darth Vader, which explains this scene in more detail. Although the novel takes place in Legends continuity, there is nothing as of now to suggest that this can't be the explanation in canon as well, as there is no evidence to refute that this happened in both versions. In the novel, Anakin's dying moments are explained, and we learn that he had to receive an extremely expedited training form from Obi-Wan and Yoda in order to preserve his consciousness past death. Although this took place over a very brief span of time, they were able to give him a sufficient crash course in his dying moments, and given his inherent natural power in the Force and incredible ability to influence it, he was able to adapt easily enough to ultimately succeed. Shortly after this, his body does in fact disappear, only it happens after the scene where we see in Return of the Jedi when Vader's body is being burned. This means that just seconds after dying, his body does in fact vanish into the Force just the same as Obi-Wan and Yoda's did. It's just that we as an audience do not get to see it, which also explains one curious detail about Anakin Skywalker's funeral. At the funeral pyre on Endor, we see Luke burning the entirety of Darth Vader's suit, with the mask intact despite him having just removed it from Anakin's body moments earlier. Even though Luke had just taken the mask off of Vader in order to finally meet his father face to face, he strangely put it back on for Anakin's funeral, despite Anakin finally breaking free of Darth Vader, which does not make a ton of sense if his body is still intact. It would make more sense that Luke would allow his father to be burned without the helmet, seeing as he is no longer Darth Vader, and had returned to the former war hero that he had been once long ago as Anakin. If this Legends continuity explanation is the same in canon, however, then it would reframe the scene drastically, and it would mean that Luke isn't burning Anakin's body, but instead he's burning the empty Darth Vader suit, and putting a final end to the last legend of Lord Vader. This would mean that Luke isn't orchestrating a funeral, but instead he's getting rid of the last artifacts that represent Lord Vader, whilst knowing full well that his father is already one with the Force, and his physical form is no longer on the mortal plane. The second explanation, though, is the one that recently became possible thanks to the finale of Obi-Wan Kenobi in his own solo Disney Plus series, as it poses a few questions of its own regarding Force Ghost manifestation. The idea proposes that a Jedi doesn't necessarily have to have vanished into the Force in order to manifest themselves as a Force ghost. This was just the most complete version of this training that both Obi-Wan and Yoda were able to completely master. Those who are able to thoroughly complete their training are able to vanish, and since Obi-Wan and Yoda each had years in exile to master this technique, They achieved the fullest extent of what it was capable of. However, one Jedi in particular, in addition to Anakin, has already been shown as a Force ghost, and in that form, despite his body still being intact following his death. We are of course talking about Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, whose story might offer us some insight into what might have happened with Anakin during his final dying moments. We know that until recently in Star Wars lore, it has been confirmed that Qui-Gon Jinn's training was incomplete, and that's why until now, he's only been shown as a disembodied voice or waning consciousness. He manifests himself on Mortis during the Clone Wars as a physical body, and explains that he is only able to do so since Mortis is a particularly strong Force nexus, capable of channeling incredible amounts of energy for him in order to tap into and finally manifest a physical body through the Force. When Qui-Gon was killed at the hands of Darth Maul and Naboo, however, his body remained, and he was taken home for a proper Jedi funeral, wherein he had his body burned just like Darth Vader's. So, is it possible that since Anakin's training was so haphazard and incomplete that he did not need his body to disappear in order to create a Force ghost manifestation of himself? If we use Qui-Gon as a precedent, then it seems to indicate that a Jedi doesn't necessarily need their body to vanish if they are to become a Force spirit. We know that Anakin Skywalker is one of the most powerful Force users in history, and was in fact the chosen one, born of the Force itself, and prophesied to bring balance to it. This means that Anakin is worlds stronger than Qui-Gon Jinn ever was, despite all of his worldly exploration and ability to learn the intricacies of the Force. It's theoretically possible that Anakin's body didn't disappear, but given his incredible strength in the Force, he was still able to take Obi-Wan's limited teachings and complete the process by being one of the most powerful Force sensitives in galactic history. One interesting third idea to take note of, however, is that eventually both Anakin and Qui-Gon Jinn's bodies were burned, though this is under the assumption that Luke is not simply burning the suit, but is actually burning Anakin's body. If Luke is truly burning his father's body, then he is conducting what appears to be a proper Jedi funeral given how Qui-Gon was laid to rest. And it's only after each of their respective bodies are destroyed that we see them as Force ghosts. If the destruction of the physical body is in fact a necessity, then it's possible that Anakin and Qui-Gon took a different approach that wasn't necessarily seen as the proper technique, but that it still worked nonetheless. While there's little to suggest that this is a necessity, it's an interesting commonality to take into account, especially since Jedi funerals during the Clone Wars showed Jedi being laid to rest by being buried, not burned. But anyway, this is still a viable reason why we believe the physical body may have to be destroyed in order for one to become a fully formed Force ghost. But anyway, students of the Force, what are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on this explanation? Why do you think Anakin Skywalker was still able to become a Force ghost while his physical body was still in the physical world, along with all of the others that we've seen, except until recently with Qui-Gon Jinn? As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching this channel. Hit that subscribe button, and may the Force be with you.